Can you, while we get started, can you send Mr. Tomasini a new link? For some reason, he just asked if the link was broken, and obviously,
Yeah, I should be able to do that, assuming the email that I have is good. But as soon as you said yes, I clicked go live, so you are live now.
okay.
Madeline, I can take care of that if you want me to.
That would be great. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Welcome to the February meeting of the Maritime Advisory Board. As I was explaining to everyone, it turns out it is the board is a board of one this evening, with everyone on the Maritime Advisory Board doing something maritime on the water or on an island out of the area. But that notwithstanding that, the session is recorded, so we're going to proceed with our regular meeting. We have some guests this evening, and then I will circulate the link to the rest of the board so they can catch up. But certainly this will limit the number of questions for everybody at this point. So with that said, I always try to introduce who's here for those of you that are online just for the phone, not a video. We have Jackie Guild from the Deputy City Manager. Thank you. I'm trying to get the titles right. We have Ross Arnett, Alderman from Ward 8. We have Stephen Rice. Now the screen is moving around. Stephen Rice from the Office of Planning and Zoning. We have Jake Iverson, who comes in from Watermark. Frida Wildy, our other board members who's attending tonight. Eric Lashinsky from Planning and Zoning. Madeline from our COTV. Kimberly Consoli is our reporter. Ashley Leonard joins us from the Office of Law, and Mike Tomasini is the third board member that's participating this evening. So with that, I'm going to let Jackie go first and start with an update on the electric mobility program that is working its way through the city. And we have Beth Bellis, our harbor master, just joined us.
Okay. And Terry, it was my understanding that you really wanted to focus on the electric ferry, or did you want to talk about the whole electric mobility plan?
Our focus has really been just on the electric ferry.
Yeah.
And I follow the rest of it, as it comes out in the mail on the website. So
Okay.
Our focus is really just on the impact of that and if there's something on the rest of the plan that might impact the maritime zones or the maritime the water, then fine, but otherwise just the part.
Okay, yeah, I can tie that in. I provided Madeline with just a few slides just to give you some information and visuals on it. She can pull that up for me. And so the electric ferry, the mayor had included that in the 100% electric mobility plan for Annapolis. So the city staff started exploring different options. We've talked to a number of different vendors. We've made a trip to Baltimore and looked and talked to a group there about potentially retrofitting some electric ferries that were not used. And there's been some other groups that have just sent us information. So you can go on to the next slide, Madeline. And with that in mind, so Ordinance 4021 was passed last year by the City Council unanimously for the 100% electric mobility plan. And part of that was the electric boat for Eastport linking to downtown Annapolis by ferry. And the mayor's objectives were to build water transportation as a viable travel option in Annapolis. And this is the first step in that goal, towards that goal, and reduce traffic congestion and greenhouse gas emissions in the process, provide equitable transportation between Eastport and downtown Annapolis. So there we would be linking to bus and other modes of transportation to link to the ferry route across Spot Creek. And also use it as a first step to demonstrate electric boats as an alternative to fossil fuel powered boats. Next slide. So moving towards that goal of acquiring a ferry, we found a grant through the Department of Transportation's Federal Transit Administration for a no or low emitting ferry pilot program. And after looking at it, planning and zoning And the Department of Transportation, the mayor's office and city manager's office and harbor master's office got together and talked it through and thought that we had a very good chance by applying for this grant funding to acquire a ferry. And it's all for capital expenditures around acquisition of a ferry, the infrastructure, and dock improvements as landing sites. So we were successful. We applied last fall for this grant. And then on January 26th, the city was notified that it indeed was a recipient. And this is through FTA, as I mentioned. It's for electric and low emitting ferries and charging equipment with the goal of reducing greenhouse gases and using alternative fuels. And they awarded $97.6 million, as I show here in the slide, between 7 states. There were 2 ferry awards in Maryland. One was to the city of Baltimore to replace hybrid electric ferries they have there. And then the city of Annapolis received ours to acquire ferries. And this grant is through Department of Transportation, but is funded by Biden's bipartisan infrastructure bill. Next slide. So the grant award to Annapolis was a total of almost $3 million, $2.975 million. And approximately $2 million is to purchase 2 electric ferries. Now, once we get into really costing things out, we might be buying 1 ferry. And then the remainder of the amount was for the charging infrastructure, the units, and everything associated with charging infrastructure and construction of them, and related dock improvements for the 2 landing points, the one in downtown Annapolis on Prince George's Street, and the other at a spot in Eastport to be determined with certainty. Next slide. So I just wanted to give you some images of what electric ferry could look like and the size that we're thinking. The mayor originally talked about one about 25 to 27 feet, but upon the harbor master's advice, if we are going to make this ferry more flexible and eventually be able to take it into the Severn and go to other points, we probably need something a little larger, somewhere in the range of 30 to 35 feet. This particular image I'm showing is of a 35-foot vessel, but it could come in any size you wanted it to. And we're looking at something that's for passengers as well as bicycles. And this particular image is for one that would accommodate bicycles. It is loading from 2 sides. This one is shown with solar panels. Next slide is another image of the same vessel. Yeah, and then you can see the interior, how it's set up for bicycles as well as passengers around the sides, and has side loading on this particular vessel. Another option is back loading, front loading. This one is 35 foot in length, 12-foot beam, can accommodate 30 passengers and 6 bicycles. Battery life depends on what type of battery, size of battery you get. And this one goes up to 6 knots, which is our limit in the harbor anyway. But we might want something with a little bit more oomph to it if we wanted to go onto the Severn, something a little bit more powerful. And again, pricing is kind of all over the place and is varied widely while we've been looking at this. We started looking at ferry options early last year, and then this year we've talked about supply chain problems and then other battery prices going up. So depending on what we want and what we decide on in the end, the size of the vessel, how many people it can accommodate, how long a charge we want, how much power we want, we're looking at anywhere between $750,000 to $1 million per vessel. And that's all I have as far as slides. I wanted to keep this fairly short regarding the ferry. We are sort of in the beginning stages of this grant. We have not even received the confirmation letter yet, which will specify exactly how much we spend on each phase of this project and when our end date is exactly. We have at least 2 years. I know it expires in 2025. Eric Lashinsky may remember the exact date. I do not off the top of my head, but our confirmation letter will specify those types of terms. And we're starting to look, as I mentioned, we're looking at some different options. We need to fairly soon order our ferry because depending on what we do, if we go with the boat that's already built and we need to retrofit, or we go with a brand new build per our specifications, particular to Annapolis, we could be looking at 18 months to acquire a ferry. So we need to make that decision fairly soon. And then that will dictate what we need as far as charging infrastructure. And we know that we need to make some landing improvements as well. We did speak to residents early on in the process about doing a feasibility study to look at different landing points in Eastport, what would make the most sense. One landing point thrown out was Fifth Street because it provides, there's plenty of area around there for parking. There's area for us to put in the charging infrastructure, and BG&E has looked at it as helping us with charging infrastructure and has determined that that site makes sense for a number of reasons. But we do need to look at traffic, parking in general, traffic flows before we make a final decision on a ferry landing site in Eastport. Just to tie this into the rest of the electric mobility plan, 2 buses are on order. Electric buses are on order, but I asked Department of Transportation today for an update on when they may be receiving those buses. Again, it could be 18 to 24 months. They're pretty backed up on building these buses. And then also city already added the 2 vans, the kind of golf cart style type of vans. Those are all electric. They have L2 charging, and we acquired those last December. So we were using them during Midnight Madness, and they're still running through the city. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take those at this time.
So, and this may be a question for Beth, and two, you mentioned the a 35-foot vessel, but with a landing at Prince George Street. Prince George Street, I know because I was involved in some of the Berta's House discussions and visits, and I'm familiar with that. There are 3 pilings that the state basically refused to remove, and I'm wondering, Beth, will that 35-foot vessel, particularly trying to side load, be able to get to Prince George Street?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
So what I would say is Prince George's Street is not a mitigating factor. And also, I don't think the state of Maryland has any legal right to not allow us to remove those. Obviously, they're our friends, and we want to do things as best as we can to allow their icebreaker to tie up there. But I don't think, so where the harbor master office stands is we think we need to go bigger than 35 feet. So our team is going to, because we want to be forward thinking. So we understand that the initial thought was to go from City Dock to 5th Street, and that's important. But 5th Street doesn't have very much depth. So our team is going to spend the next week or 2 doing a lot of study in that area. They're going to be taking measurements, and they're going to report all of these things back to the mayor's office to say, what's the maximum size boat that can go there? Not because it's not great to have a ferry that can run between City Dock and 5th Street, because it is great. And I know the electric component is important, but I think, like, being forward thinking, we want to think like, what else can it do? Like, we want to think, what else could it do? So a 30-foot boat can't go bayfront. It probably can't go to Whitehall Bay or maybe to the Eastern Shore. So we just want to we want to think long-term.
So the other question is,
and so my team's been tasked with, in the next 2 weeks, to try to figure out, like, what's the biggest boat that can go to 5th Street? And is that going to be limiting? Is that going to be mutually exclusive? And then we can't go anywhere else with that boat. And what does it make sense to do in the long term? So that's what we're thinking about.
so the other issue, and I wish you good luck with moving those pilings. When I raised that question in the mayor's conference room with DNR, I expected them to draw guns. They were that adamant. But that having been said, we know that there is regular flooding at 5th Street and the elevation of 5th Street. I don't see people stepping off with bicycles, et cetera, into the standing water that usually is there. So it seems to me that besides the depth issue, there's also a real issue with the accessibility at Fifth Street. And again, I don't mean to be trying to throw water on this. I'm trying to understand that make sure that everybody's been addressing all of the potential problems and get it right.
Yeah, Terry, that's a good point because we've talked about that
No, I think for
already.
sure everybody wants to make sure that it makes sense and it's going to work.
Yeah, so that's one of the issues that we need to look at for any of the landing spots is, what's the effect, what's going on there now as far as sea level rise and flooding, regular flooding as well as storm flooding, and then building into the resilience part of that. So we have money as part of this grant to make the landing site improvements we need to make. And as part of that, we can make, if it was Fifth Street, we could design it around the fact that there is flooding there already, and we would expect to see with sea level rise additional flooding there. So that is a good point and one we're taking into consideration for any landing spot.
Frida, you had your hand up next, and then Mike has his hand up also. So Frida, what you have a question?
Thank you. I think Mike was actually first before me, but if it's okay, I'll go ahead. So where have you designated that there's plenty of parking in Eastport? I live 2 blocks from the proposed landing at Fifth Street, and I can tell you we are full. It's a Tuesday night. I just came home from Annapolis Yacht Club, and there is not one parking spot out in front of our house on our block on Chesapeake Avenue. And during the day, it's even worse. So where have you designated that there's plenty of parking for people to ride the ferry?
All right, if I said plenty of parking, then I misspoke. I try not to say that, so I'm surprised if I did. There's more, some of the parking lots there and in the street parking, there's more parking there than at other spots in Eastport, because everyone knows that Eastport is tight. There's narrow streets, and it's just a busy place to be. So that's why we're looking at different areas around there, but that location of Fifth Street has more room than some of the other possible landing sites. It's not a foregone conclusion. There's other issues that Terry raised. One of the points is there's already flooding there. So there's some other concerns as well.
I invite you to come down any time, day or night, afternoons when school is in session. The school teachers park on Fifth Street, and I have neighbors over there that can't get out of their driveways because people are blocking their driveways, going to lunch at the boatyard, and we're full. Now, if you designated parking at Annapolis City Marina, said 10 spots for ferry people, that might solve the problem, but there is no place to park on the peninsula in Eastport.
So, and the City Marina is a potential that's in the mix as well. So I'm glad you raised that. And also what we want to try to do is encourage people to use, either walk to this point or use mass transit or electric bikes and scooters. And this could also be where the ferry goes in would be another point where we could put an electric scooter and bike kiosks that people are taking bikes to there or from there to get around the city once they land on the side that they want to go to. So we're trying to tie all of the electric mobility modes of transportation together.
Mike, you have a question still?
So yeah, congratulations on the grant. I thought it was an innovative proposal, and I figured it would draw some attention. The original concept was a boat much different than what we're describing now, which I think is probably better than what was originally planned. But are there builders out there who are putting together these boats, or are we now drawing from a schematic that we can't find?
Now, there are builders that are building electric boats, and they're large ones, small ones. We've been in touch with some different manufacturers, some that are up in the Northeast. There's manufacturers in Texas, kind of all over the place. Obviously, Seattle and that area is way ahead of us with the use of ferries, and
Right.
Going electric is just the next logical step. Then we also there were some boats that we looked at, a group out of Baltimore that had some boats that were never picked up by what's his name on Under Armour?
Kevin Plank.
Kevin Plank, thank you. Ordered a bunch of boats that they never picked up. And so they have boats that were built to be electric and could be retrofitted. We're not sure if they exactly meet our needs. That might be a more viable, cost-effective way to go, but we need to evaluate. First, we'll get the list done of everything we want in the vessel and determine that. And then, as I said, size, capacity, power, speed, charging, et cetera. And then we decide on the manufacturer, and we will look at it from there. Did you have something else to add, Eric? You look like you were going to say something. No?
Got it. And then my second question is,
There he is.
who's that, Eric?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if there might be a delay on my end. I'm not sure. I was just going to say that I think you hit it, Jackie, actually, the point about the different fabricators, that a lot of people have actually been reaching out to us. I mean, frankly, it's
right.
just once they heard about the grant.
Good. All right. And then the second question, just on electric mobility in general, because I know it was kind of like this, I don't know, 3 or 4 pronged approach. I noticed for the first time the other day, the 10-minute shuttle downtown. I hadn't seen one yet. They've started running, and if you just give us a little more information about how they're scheduled, how people are getting on them, how many there are.
There are 2 of them. We acquired them in December. So they've been running since mid-December, and they run on a weekend schedule right now. I have seen them around during the day, maybe on some, like, Department of Transportation may be adding them in on some limited basis during the work week, but they're mostly running on the weekends. And they, as I mentioned before, they charge with an L2 charger, a level 2 charger, and they can run, they can do like a 5-6 hour, and again, this depends on how many people are in them. Weight does impact how long the charge will last, and the weather. Extreme heat and extreme cold will also impact the length of time they can run. But they have about a 5 to 6 hour charge, and then they have to go back in. They had one out at a time usually, because once one goes in, they can bring the other one out. And we're just going to see what the demand is so far. They were, of course, they were extremely well received during the holidays. Everyone was using them, and to get around for shopping. And we're going to continue to monitor the demand on them through the Department of Transportation. But so far they're working out well. And they're the ones that say that the front, they'll say free rides, and they say all electric. We have some more branding. I'm not sure if those are gone on the side yet that says Annapolis goes all electric. It has a big plug on it. I'm not sure if you saw them with that on it, because I haven't seen them with that branding on them yet.
So
I just saw that it said 10-minute trolley. I knew that was part of the plan. And
and what is the route for this 10-minute trial? Is it just downtown?
It loops around. It does. Yeah, it's right now. It hasn't connected to Eastport. That was the second phase of it. We were going to connect it to Eastport, and Department of Transportation was looking at how long the run is, how long they're lasting. Can we add that connection, and where it would go for? And that we're thinking, to Eastport Shopping Center, perhaps down Chesapeake Avenue. Nothing for sure yet on that front, but that is the plan right now. It's just making a loop around downtown.
Okay. Eric, was you raising your hand or just wiping your brow? All right. Does anybody else have anything for Jackie? Jackie, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time.
And Jackie, thank you.
You're welcome.
And,
I'm going to hang out though, because you may not know, but I work with Beth now. The Harbor Master's office reports to me, and I want to hear some of the other items on your agenda.
all right.
Thank you, Jackie.
Welcome. Thank you.
The second, I also promised Eric that we would take Eric second, and he was going to talk to us just an update on the public water access plan, which sort of ties with to some extent with the ferry, and also on the comprehensive plan, which I understand the draft may be getting close to publication.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. Let me talk about the public water access plan and give you an update on that. I have a few slides as well. Bear with me for a second. Um, so I've shared this exciting project with you before. This is a good time to kind of give you an update because we are advancing on this project pretty rapidly. But just for those watching at home, this came out of the Maritime Task Force of last year, which was a pretty substantial undertaking that didn't really start with a focus on public water access. It was more about enhancing, expanding, strengthening the maritime industry and economy in Annapolis. But inevitably, we talked about public water access a lot because, frankly, that's where our maritime zones are located. It's places where we have opportunities for better public water access. And we were fortunate to have Wendy O'Sullivan from the National Park Service on that task force. When we talked about the need for an actual public water access plan, something that Annapolis had never done comprehensively, the National Park Service offered to pay for that. And so they've been a great partner on this. And this slide here was from the plan that came out of the strategy report from the task force. And these pieces, these kind of scope items are really what became the scope for our public water access plan, which I have here. And, it really is kind of best summarized by the quote at the top in terms of what we're trying to do. It's about prioritizing concrete steps that both the city and partners, that's important. We can't do it alone. We can take in the future to improve, enhance, expand water access within and adjacent to the city limits. So certainly working with Anne Arundel County is something we're currently doing and will continue to do. I wanted to highlight this definition, which came out of the Maritime Task Force. It's in our city code today. It's primarily in reference to new businesses, restaurants in particular, that will be established on the waterfront in the future. We wanted to make sure that they provide public water access that's sort of unconditional. You don't need to be a patron to get to the water. And this is how we defined it. And the main takeaway here is that we're really looking at public water access pretty broadly. It's not necessarily about getting in the water, although that would be great. It's really about getting to the water, being able to stand by the water, see the water, and appreciate it. But we came up with these few bullets through the task force process that were kind of the main types of activities we envisioned happening along the waterfront. So this is kind of a starting point. I think we will probably be expanding on this in the public water access plan, since we're kind of looking at it beyond kind of the development opportunities. We've done a lot of mapping. Seems like a very basic map, but it was challenging to put together. I mean, we really did not have a comprehensive map of all of our water access locations. And there's a lot of naming conventions that weren't consistent in terms of the sites. And then there's private sites that are important to acknowledge and that are public, but privately managed. So just want to zoom in to sort of show you that the blue spots are the city managed sites today. The orange are what we know to be public access easements. So you can see 22 is Wells Cove, and 40 is the site across from the Eastport Democratic Club. Most of these need better signage. There's no question. Even the ones that are official city parks need better signage in most cases, for people to actually use them and know that they're public and they're welcome there. The purple sites are planned City Annapolis parks. So you have Carr's Beach here, Hawkins Cove, the planned Gateway Park on College Creek, and then Tolson Street on Weems Creek is a newly dedicated park in West Annapolis. And then, the kind of bright green sites are privately managed public open space like St. Luke's, the Crab Facility, St. John's College, the Bates Athletic. Actually, actually, I think we're referring to the Chesapeake Children's Museum there, number 19. And then we have all of our other major city parks and county parks. So we've done this kind of mapping for the region as well, that takes in Greenberry Point and Smithsonian site, Cirque. We've done blow-ups of the different creeks to show detail on those watersheds. There's a number of projects that are already happening. We're not waiting for this plan to get done. We have funding to advance the Hawkins Cove restoration and park project that kicked off a couple weeks ago. There was a contractor pre-bid conference at the site. There's a lot of interest there. We expect proposals back in just a few weeks. And then the College Creek, along College Creek, we have the Robert Eads Park is this photo here on the bottom, where we've been working on the design of that for the last year. And I think that'll probably break ground this summer. We're getting pretty close on that. So those are exciting initiatives. And I mean, I think I should have just acknowledged that, I mean, these are high need areas. We've kind of mapped social vulnerability criteria that come from the CDC, and, not every socially vulnerable community is along the waterfront, but we do have a few, and these are sites that have been kind of long deferred and finally getting the investment. None of this really impacts the city dock project, I should say. I mean, it's really kind of moving forward on its own parallel path. We're kind of coordinating, understanding what that's going to be, but the Prince George Street end, Commodore Barry Park, that will be something that we'll address in this public water access plan. And obviously it's related to the ferry project. But the city dock is sort of a uniquely substantial project. And I'd say the public water access plan is really focused on everything else. We've wrapped up our community survey at this point. We got close to 500 responses. We got over 500 responses between English and Spanish language versions, and tried some new things in terms of getting the word out to people, just to try to be as inclusive as possible. We've done a number of events to get this project in front of different communities. We have done 3 focus groups at this point. Most recent one was just last week. Mike Tomasini was on that. Thank you, Mike. It was primarily focused on partnership opportunities. So we had representatives from various nonprofits, businesses, property owners, trying to think, basically groups that we've already been partnering with and would like to continue partnering with. And we just tried to think of all the ideas that were worth sharing. You can watch those focus groups on our website for the public water access plan. I'll just kind of show folks it's on the city's website. If you Google Annapolis Public Water Access Plan, it's the first thing that comes up, but it's also within our planning and zoning website under comprehensive planning and the 2040 comprehensive plan. And you can see the focus group video recordings are here. And we've done a comprehensive site inventory of all of our existing water access sites that focus on all of these features, 7 categories, criteria. Here we're showing Leon Wolf Park. Coming out of that, we did a needs assessment report that was done in July. We actually had to send that to the state. It was a requirement to receive some funding for Truxton Park. These 4 metrics are things that I particularly find insightful, when it comes to access, equitable access. They're kind of the four important ingredients in my view, and it's public transit, sidewalk access, trail connections, and wayfinding signage. So we're doing better than I would think on the sidewalks. Doesn't necessarily mean they're ADA compliant, but they're there. And we're not doing very well on the other categories. So in terms of next steps, we are moving on to the plan document, or one of the major, there's kind of 2 big deliverables. One is this plan document that right now, includes all of these components. It's going to have recommendations for all of our existing sites. It's going to have opportunities for new and improved water access, and recommendations on a few other the standards, the program partnership initiatives, mobility initiatives, and so the ferry would be included as part of that. It'll be well summarized in the end through an action plan. This is something I'm particularly excited, but this is kind of more of the public-facing outcome. It's a mapping tool that I think is going to really help clarify the water access that exists today and what you can do at those sites. I'll just give you a glimpse of that here. It's really in pretty rough beta mode right now, but and the photography is all going to be improved. It's we're just relying on some stock imagery. Nothing really impressive in terms of photography right now, but basically it's loading slowly here. We've done profiles on all of the existing water access locations. When the map loads, you'll see this is sort of our overall water access map that shows all the sites. And you could basically click on a site, it'll zoom in, it'll give you some key information. We're sort of in the process of editing this information, and National Park Service has actually brought on a writer that's assisting us in developing some really improved narrative that we can use here and on future signage. So that's pretty exciting. Right now, the descriptions are pretty basic, but we sort of want this tool to be both for residents and visitors to the city, and kind of entice people to check out these sites, and also take pressure off certain sites. So people know, if they're at Burnside Park, they know where else they can visit in close proximity, and they know what's there and what's not there. You can see the base map includes transit lines, our trail networks, bike connections, and it's basically intended to provide. It actually includes major parking areas, public parking facilities, and so we think, I should say, we're going to have a series of more tailored maps on this website. So this one is specific to just paddle access, same kind of format, but a lot of the sites do offer that today, but in different formats, and we try to be clear about what that looks like. So we're developing this. It's going to get improved, but I think we'll probably have a couple different themed sites at the top added to this, maybe one for fishing. There's just a few sites in the city that allow grilling today, but I mean, that's kind of a conflict that we hear about, and we want to try to be more clear about where you could do that. So that might be one, it would probably just include Truxton and Ellen Moyer Nature Park. But that's the other major outcome that we're working on. And then finally, signage is something that we all know is kind of a real immediate need that we don't really need to wait for the plan to start to fundraise around. So we put in a grant request recently for this, also to the National Park Service, but through their recently launched Chesapeake Gateways Network grant program. And we're really just asking for the funds to do kind of a design manual to be very clear about the kind of signage that each of these sites should have, allow them to be consistent and thorough, and so that, you know, they're wayfinding, interpretive, regulatory signage. And there's so many example precedents that we can look at where that's been done well. And it'll just be an opportunity to kind of clean up a lot of these sites. And there's so many signs today that are, you know, kind of stacked on top of each other in many cases from different eras and saying different things, and some of it's contradictory. So we want to just kind of clean all of that up, and it's really hard to imagine these sites being well used unless we have that improved signage. So that's where we're at with this
All right.
right now.
Eric, thank you. That was a lot more. There's been a lot more
Sure.
going on than I think we realized, and I look forward to seeing particularly the signage and the integration of a lot of these parks. I do have a couple of questions. You mentioned Eads. Is that the sort of the street inn that goes down past St. Mary's Cemetery?
No, that would be Northwest Street Park. Robert Eads is formerly called College Creek Park. It's at the end of Clay Street, where Clay kind of turns into Glenwood Avenue, sort of the headwaters of College
Oh,
Creek.
way up there. Okay, up towards the
Yeah.
stadium.
Yeah, and so the phase one that we're working on right now is it's pretty straightforward. I mean, really, it's about just getting people down to the water in a more accessible path. There is a memorial to Robert Eads that's pretty exciting. That's collaboration with a local artist that will basically have this large granite memorial near the water, and it's going to be a kind of seating area. There'll be a path down to put a paddle craft in the water, but there's a phase for right now that would expand the park, actually would double the size of the park. And it's a interesting, we shared that at a public meeting recently. Basically, what our consultants found in working on the phase one is that if we straighten the Clay Street, makes a really awkward turn at the end to Glenwood. And if you actually straighten that street, make it a safer roadway, you could actually expand the size of the park there. So it's something that we're still exploring, but we think it's a feasible idea, and it impacts a couple of adjacent properties, but one is BG&E's property and the other is the Housing Authority's property, and they both have generally been supportive so far. So we'll see, but that would be a more expensive phase of the project. So we're trying to advance.
The other question was, and I think you referred to it as the gateway. Is that the area that's on the, if you're going out Route Boulevard, would be on the right-hand side, just at the end of the bridge?
That's right. That's right. It's a wooded area. It's today it's half owned. The portion, half of it closer to Row is owned by the state of Maryland, and the other half is owned by the Navy. Both of those entities have been supportive of turning it into a park, essentially, and it would be passive use park. The mayor's vision is for it to be kind of like a community boating facility. He wants to complement the sort of ambiance of College Creek with St. John's College and Navy both having boathouses and create kind of like a community boathouse facility. But really the first step is a feasibility study, and the county, Anne Arundel County, is really wanting to advance that project as well. And so they've budgeted some funding to do a feasibility study for that site. So for, I think, the current fiscal year, I don't know the status of when that feasibility study would kick off, but Anne Arundel County would be leading it. And, we have to kind of understand, getting down to the water is something that it's not necessarily straightforward right there. It's kind of a steep slope, and but seems doable. And
there was early on, there was actually some sort of generic plans that it was going to be basically a paddlecraft facility, which made some sense in terms of you've got paddlecraft basically operating out of Ellen Moyer Park, and this would bring a different location, a different area of the city. But it sounds like it may be has scaled down from that a little bit.
Well, I think it's probably going to be phased out. I mean, I think there's going to be initial, the idea is to kind of activate the site. I mean, it had longtime homeless encampment, and those individuals were recently relocated. And I mean, the idea is really to get people using the site. So I think there will probably be a phase one kind of passive trail system created there. And then the phase two would probably be involving how to get people paddlecraft into the water. What's that look like? It's you kind of have the grade change is pretty significant. So, but it's really cool. So, I mean, the railroad tracks are still there from when the train came into downtown. So there's some really interesting remnants there that might make for some park features.
All right, anybody have any questions or comments? Ross?
Thank you, Terry. And I want the Eastport people to vouch that I raised this. There is a street in park at Jeremy's Way that the mayor promised to spend money to get fixed. And I think it's in the Office of Law trying to determine who actually owns that. But that would be another lovely little walk down to the water. And so I hope we keep that on the list and keep after it. It needs to be fixed before it falls into the water, but it also would be nice if it could be a way to get down at least to the water, if not into the water.
Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, that.
Yeah, just what you needed, Eric. Another thing.
Well, no, I'm
list.
aware. I'm aware of that. I'm aware of the issues there, and it's like, unfortunately, a lot of sites in the city have kind of a cloudy history in terms of their deed, and but I think this public water access plan is going to make clear that we really need to consolidate every piece of public water access that we have today and figure out a management plan. And I did actually talk with staff from our Department of Public Works. We have a new project engineer there, Burr Vogel, and he's taken on a lot of the street and park construction projects that are already in the capital improvement program. And he was saying that the plan is to fund all of these. I mean, there's sort of like a deferred list of bulkhead improvements and basically create a dedicated fund to do the projects that we already have. And then any new water access project would be kind of a separate CIP item. But, we've been sort of treating them as one-offs for a while. So.
All right, anybody else have anything for Eric on that topic? And
Looks like Jackie.
Yeah, I just had a comment. So Eric and I have been working with Public Works on some of these street ends, and also with the Harbor Master's office. And as soon as our new director of Rec and Parks comes on board, we plan to get a meeting with her and talk to her about making sure that there's correct signage at the parks that are actually parks, and talk to her about this comprehensive look at street ends rather than the one-offs that Eric mentioned. And then also for the ones that are city property but are not designated as parks, get those into the park system and with the proper signage that people know that they can utilize them and how they can utilize them.
Mike, I'm not real good at recognizing hands up. I'm better if you do this, but.
I'll watch it.
Well, so you're learning, Terry. That's good. I just want to, I hate to get sappy at a Maritime Advisory Board meeting, but this, when we were doing the Maritime Task Force, this was the group that I was in charge of, myself and Vic Pasco. And a lot of the recommendations, I feel like, a lot of times you feel like maybe it's falling on deaf ears, but Eric really listened. And in addition, he's continuing to listen, because we were on a meeting the other day where we brought up some of the issues that he's addressed in his presentation tonight. I mean, it was literally like a week ago, and he's taken that feedback into consideration and honed his plan. I think we're in a really great place. I mean, I think that for a lot of us, we feel like that's been the thing that's lacking. There are a lot of water access points. We don't know where they are. We don't know that they are, and we don't know what we can do with them. And sure, there's a lot of work to be done on making sure that we don't lose ones that we have, or that we get back the ones that we lost by attrition. But really great, Eric. I mean, really,
Appreciate it.
kudos to you. And then
Appreciate it.
on the flip side, one of the things that we discussed in the meeting the other day was the continuing stray electrical current at Truxton Park. And I was talking about it in the car with my wife today in anticipation of today's meeting. And if we look at it today, it's a big deal. But if we look at it 9 months from now, when City Dock is not our primary water access point and Truxton Park becomes that, then it's a much bigger deal, and it requires mobilization of resources that I'm not sure that are happening right now. So I'm not sure. Beth is here, Jackie's here, Eric's here. Is there anybody who can tell us what the city is planning to do about the stray electrical current at Truxton Park?
I'll let Beth take that.
Apparently not, and I take it.
She dropped
But
off.
I
But is she-
mean, I
know
thought
that
we had
she's-
actually solved that, or I had thought that had been solved last fall. And frankly, I took it off the agenda because I recall that some resolution had, maybe the resolution is it just got cold and nobody's going in the water down there, but.
So I know that what Beth will tell you is that the new guidance for all harbor masters is that no one should swim anywhere near a dock where there is electric power. That there's always going, and BGD did confirm for us, there's always going to be a bit of a return on an electrical line. Sometimes it could be stronger than at other times, but some people might experience it as nothing at all. And some there will be a very, very mild shock, and at other times it could be more. Our city electrical engineer has told us that, we've done everything we can do to track it down with BG&E, and there's been some recommendations about how to use the water there, not to touch metal when you're in the water, etc. I don't know that there's been a firm decision on whether we're going to allow the children to participate in the Rec and Parks programs in the summer to utilize that site or not this year, but it's something we have to decide imminently because that's just around the corner. But we have not, the site is not closed off to anyone launching a boat or deciding to launch a kayak there. There are warning signs that are up there, but there's no prohibition against using Truxton Park boat ramp.
All right, I'll put it back on the agenda and we'll stay tuned.
But so,
Everybody else?
Jackie, is that launching of all paddlecraft? So paddle boards, kayaks, yeah, fishing.
I wish Beth was still on because I need to go back down there and remind myself of what the sign says, but I don't think that there's a warning sign, but there's no prohibition against launching there. And which is the question for us for Rec and Parks, though, is are we going to allow children to launch craft there as part of our
Right.
Rec and Parks programs? Yeah.
It's an important question. And
Yeah.
and on the other side of that, has the city brought in anybody private? I mean, there are some experts, electrical experts in the city that might be able to dig into this, who have experience with this. You know, that
And to my knowledge, no, there's no outside sources except for BG&E because it's their lines that they were looking at. They were testing every single dock there to see if there was a rogue current going through that they were not aware of or something extraordinary. But they couldn't identify anything of that sort. But apart from BG&E, no other electrical consultants.
And has anybody been over to Shearwater, which is the nearest private marina, to see if the electrical current is coming from there?
I want to say yes to that, but I'll double check on that for you, Mike.
Right.
I believe that they checked all of those piers. I'll double check on Shearwater with BG&E and Public Works.
Well, the apartments that are right next door I don't remember whether they have what they have in the way of.
There's not a lot of infrastructure down there, but
Yeah. But they're the closest neighbor on that side of on the Truxton Park side is what was going to be condos. Now I think it's still apartments, but all right. Anything else for Eric on that topic? And if not, Eric, if you just give us a very brief update on the comprehensive plan and we can let you go.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say, I gave a presentation to the Planning Commission last Thursday that we posted on the website for the comprehensive plan. So again, Google Annapolis Ahead 2040, you'll come to our comprehensive plan. It's also, there's a link at the bottom of the city's website, the main page of the city website, to the comprehensive plan. And we posted that presentation. It was on the land use approach that we're taking in the comprehensive plan. So I think it might be insightful. But roughly speaking, in terms of the schedule, I know we've been pushing the schedule repeatedly. Right now, we're trying to make it for May, and I think that's doable. We're on the home stretch here, and so I shared a schedule graphic in that presentation on Thursday, but it essentially, the way the comprehensive plan kind of moves through the Planning Commission, that's really they're tasked by Maryland State Code to sort of deliver a comprehensive plan draft to the City Council that they are happy with and has received public comment. And so we have to work through the Planning Commission. We have a meeting with the Planning Commission at the start of a 60-day review period. That would be a public comment period. We'll be setting up a mechanism on the city's website to receive comments and facilitating copies of the comprehensive plan in digital and print format if needed. We'll be collecting all those comments, and then after 60 days, there's through the Planning Commission, we have public hearings, one or more. Most likely there'll be a few, and then Planning Commission has to sort of deliberate, come to terms, and decide if there are recommendations for revisions. We would be looking for them to approve the plan, with revisions or recommendations, and essentially send it to the City Council for an adoption process, which then could take several months. So that's essentially how it's going to unfold, and that's a state kind of process that we mandate. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Any questions for Eric on that process? All right, thank you, Eric.
Sure.
We'll move on down to the rest of the items on the agenda. The next item is it was Debbie's report from the MIAB, the County Maritime Board. She sent me an email, and I'll just highlight a couple things that came up. On workforce development, there's apparently there was an engineers week that was February 17th to the 24th. And it includes a maritime day on February 24th, which is it's Friday. And invitations went out to high schools. They've got about 100 students signed up for Maritime Day. And I think it looks like Port Annapolis, Harrington Harbor, and Javens have offered their properties for tours for students. So that will be taking place. There's also was a dredging update for Anne Arundel County and from the Corps of Engineers. And it looks like the report is that they were finishing dredging at the headwaters of the Severn. And then on the to be dredged soon list is Podickory Creek, the Little Magathy, Rockhold Creek Channel, and some areas in the South River. Nothing that really touched on Annapolis or any of the creeks in Annapolis. The rest of the meeting was just routine, more administrative stuff, their schedule, bylaws review, etc. Those were the two main highlights from that meeting. Stephen, what do we have on economic development update, eco gardening?
Well, I can, excuse me, talk to you about that. We did give a report to the Economic Matters Committee on the economic gardening program. This was a couple of weeks ago, and we had 6 maritime businesses that participated in the program. Actually, I'll tell you which businesses there were. If you give me just 1 second. Let's see here. Yacht Services, Annapolis Sailing School, Schooner Woodwind, Atlantic Cruising Yachts, Annapolis School of Seamanship, and Diversified Marine Services. There were 26 reports that were created by the Economic Gardening Group in total for these 6 businesses. 92% of the delivered reports were determined to be useful by the businesses. 8% of the delivered reports were partially useful, and the average overall program rating given by the participating businesses was 9.3 out of 10. So all in all, the program was very successful from the standpoint of the businesses. They got a lot out of it. And the city council, or at least the Economic Matters Committee, would like to, at the recommendation of economic development, expand the program actually beyond maritime so that it could impact other parts of the city. Some of the feedback, and one of the things that was interesting, the businesses all were having problems with sourcing talent, workforce development challenges. And what we had talked with the Economic Matters Committee about was actually investing in and rolling out a maritime workforce initiative and working with Anne Arundel Workforce Development Corporation on this initiative. So this is something that is in the works, and the long and the short is that it would be a training program for Annapolis-based residents that would train them so that they could take advantage of apprenticeship programs and some of the positions at the entry level that are available within the maritime industry. So it's very early stages, but as a result of the economic gardening program and some of the feedback that was given to the council, that's something that the some of the members of the council are looking at launching. So that's economic gardening. Did you want to hear about anything else?
Anything you have to bring, but before we leave, that interesting that you mentioned partnering with the Workforce Development Corporation. That was the group that was we're at the County Maritime Board and are involved in this apparently this Maritime Day on February 24th. So that might be a good lead in to touch base with them and see how their program is going and how many of the 100 participants are coming out of the city too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
And yeah, and just I'll touch on a couple of other.
Mr. Thomasini.
Oh, sure. Thought he was scratching his head.
I did it. Thanks, Stephen. I did it without the technology this time, Terry. So I think the EYC Foundation is also doing something similar, a job fair in conjunction with Bert Jabins. I can't remember the date. I think it's late April or early May. Does anybody know anything more about that?
That time frame would almost sound like a hiring fair.
Yeah. It's like a job fair. Hold on. I'm getting the other piece of my technology. All right. So it's April 27th, 2023 from 9:30 to 12:30 at Jabins. It's a combination between EYC Foundation, Anne Arundel County Public Schools. It's for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students at county high schools and marine and maritime industry professionals. So it's a chance to display the job openings, right? And then also meet with students who are interested in it. And it's called the Marine and Maritime Career Expo. And there was a flyer up at Jabins. That's how I saw it the other day when I was over there. But contact Wendy Madden, who is that looks like the HR director for MYacht Services. So it's hr@myachtservices.net.
Okay.
You got it, Jake? Yeah.
All right. Anything else for Stephen?
Yeah, I'll be very quick. If you hadn't heard, our Director of Planning and Zoning, Michael Laplace, will be leaving. His last day, I'm told, is March 3rd. Excuse me. And also on the maritime reporting front, of course, I did request the numbers from the maritime businesses. The response rate was not great. I'd say we're at 25% at best. So I'm in the process of chasing down those that haven't responded with their information. So because we made the requests and sent the letters in December with a December 30 or 31 deadline, we gave everyone another 30 days, just because of the holidays and so forth for compliance purposes. But we have a second and third series of letters that are going out requesting the information. So I'll have more on that once I actually have more responses that I can tabulate. Month of January, a couple of numbers. We have 4 new businesses and 3 expanding or relocating businesses in the city. Our vacancy rate was 6.1%. And also we did an annual report for Economic Matters at their last meeting. During last calendar year, Economic Development provided assistance to 386 businesses and partners, and we had 32 new businesses to the city. We added 32 new businesses to the city. The last thing I will say, the seasonal parklet program, we are gearing up for that program's launch. The preliminary plan is to launch the website March 1st, have the applications, the I'll say applications, site plans, and everything in from the restaurants April 1st, and then, you know, hopefully have the leases and everything operational May 1st. So that's the kind of loose timeline that we have. And that's probably enough for me. So I'm going to stop now. I think Beth has a hand up. I'm not sure if that's for me or if that's in reference to something else, but I just noted that.
What's it, Beth, do you have a question?
I do. Can you hear me?
We can.
I am so sorry. I've had audio problems. I wanted to throw my computer out the window for the last half an hour. But pursuant to the agenda, I have updates whenever you're ready.
All right, then we can move on to the street and park updates. That would be the next item on the agenda.
Great, and I'm so sorry for my technical difficulties. So I can tell you that Chestnut Avenue is partially funded. It's mostly funded. The architecture and engineering are complete, and a successful bidder has been chosen to begin construction. The completed project will replace a failing bulkhead and a floating dock and install a new rain garden. It's going to be great. I've been looking forward to this since 2016. But the city has to come to the table with about $100,000 because the bidders came in higher than we expected. So 6 is somewhat funded, but time is running out for the grant money. So we have to ask for another extension. And we're hopeful that the approved Public Works, that will be approved by Public Works and has to begin the process of selecting a new architecture and engineering firm via bids. Moving forward in FY 2024, the waterway improvement money that we have asked for is for 4th Street, Shipwright, and Hawkins Cove, and we don't have any official response, but we're hopeful. And then regarding Thompson Street, Mike Rosberg, who's a newer employee with Public Works, is working on a design for a slope drain, targeting to have design done this month. And then we're hoping to repair the pier because it's going to take a long time to make a great thing happen there, and we don't want the community to be without a pier. So we're hoping to do something in the interim where they can use that for the next 2 years. So that's my update regarding street ends.
Let's just segue right on into is there any update on the issue of fee waivers at City Dock and the May upbringing?
Yeah, a little bit. So a fee waiver is in process for the Wilma Lee to come to City Dock for a few days for Maryland Day. For the board's information, it's highly unlikely that the city would otherwise make any charter dock revenue. So I think everyone's in support of this. I think it would be good for everyone to support the fee waiver. Upbringing unfortunately has been canceled for 2023. We weren't able to obtain tall ship participants, so the city will look for other opportunities for maritime festivals. And then regarding Birdistock fee waivers in general, the Birdistock or long dock is governed by the Birdistock policy, which was legally adopted by proper due process, and the policy is available on our website if anyone wants to look at it.
All right. Any questions for Beth on either of those topics? That actually is going to pretty much conclude because we don't have Mr. Allen or Mr. Miller present to tell us if there's anything new on the Maryland Maritime Hall of Fame. And We don't have a quorum, so we can't do an election. And the other two items are deferred. So I will ask my other two board members, is there anything that you would like to bring up for the good of the cause? Yes, Frida.
So I have heard that EYC is planning on doing some sort of celebration to honor the 25th anniversary of the Whitbread stopover, and that AYC is perhaps working on something for Chelsea Racing for the same event. And so I was just wondering if anyone had any updates and how we can promote those events, because I think it was a wonderful time in our maritime history here. And I think it's terrific that both yacht clubs want to do something.
Well, I guess we could get somebody to sponsor Whitbread Ale for everybody at some point, since that was their and hand out Volvos or a raffle. No, I had not heard anything about either one of those. I certainly Eastport Yacht Club never lacks for finding an excuse for a party. So I suspect they will do a good job, and it'll be interesting to see what they plan to do. If they plan to, I don't think they'll bring a Whitbread boat back, but maybe they'll get a couple of people to show up that had sailed on that during that. I think Renee did some of the legs on. I think it was during the Whitbread, not the Volvo.
Yeah, she was, I think, the 93, 94 Whitbread.
Right.
But if I hear more, I'll try to send it around to the board.
Good. Thank you. Ross, anything from you?
Not that's mentionable in public.
All right. Anybody else have anything? If not, I don't think we have a quorum, so we don't have a motion to adjourn. So we will adjourn